Are you highly sensitive? In today's video, I'm going to take a look at the link between being a lone wolf and a highly sensitive person. The highly sensitive wolf, an intuitive journey. There's 3 stages here to the intuitive journey. First is, of course, being born with this natural intuitive sense that was a survival skill. The second is twofold: being deceived and then questioning their intuitive nature. Number 3 is realigning with their truth, realizing that not everyone is like them and their intuition is often correct. They had been ignoring it for so many years that it's time to realign themselves with their truth. Now, in one of the main research papers on lone wolves by Eric Geese and David Meach, who you heard me speak about in my last video, the study included 316 radio-colored wolves, and 75 of those were considered to be dispersers, aka lone wolves. Now that works out to be 23% of the wolves that were studied turned out to be lone wolves. And it's an interesting percentage because the cool link here is that 20% of humans are highly sensitive. What I've come to learn about highly sensitive people, and a lot of the research done by Elaine Aron on highly sensitive people, is that highly sensitive people evolved as a survival skill. Sensitivity evolved to help people survive. If you could easily absorb information from your surroundings, you're more sensitive to those potential dangers, as well as sensing survival needs like nearby water sources. Highly sensitive people and highly sensitive animals pick up on more environmental cues and, as such, are extremely attuned to their surroundings, and sometimes a little too much so, which is why part of that lone wolf personality can also be anxious, as well as hyper vigilant. And it makes sense because high sensitivity is something that is born as a trauma response. And being hypervigilant and extremely attuned to your surroundings are traits of having experienced some level of trauma. Back to how being highly sensitive was evolved as a survival skill. These heightened senses were beneficial so we could be the first to predict danger. Highly sensitive people are not fighters. We're not going to protect ourselves with our physical bodies, but we could protect ourselves with an intuitive sixth sense. Knowing that something didn't quite feel right gave us an edge to leave the environment or plan ahead for something that intuitively we knew was about to happen. But the truth is that although highly sensitive people have this intuitive sense, many often ignore it because they don't trust it quite yet. And time again, they'll look back to see how their feelings were actually correct. So why can't we just follow through on our initial instincts? Here's why. Lone wolves often feel misunderstood by others. And in this way, they can easily misunderstand themselves and question their intuition. Intuition is a skill that needs to be honed and trusted. So for many who were new on this journey, trusting their intuition doesn't always happen when it needs to. And so many opportunities to avoid disaster are overlooked or missed. Our downfall seems to be that we expect other people to be as caring, considerate, and compassionate as we are. And it's hard to believe how the majority of people are just not this way. And this leaves the lone wolf, or the highly sensitive person, naive for many years until they come to terms with this truth. And once realizing this truth, it creates another issue for us regarding trust, not only for others, but for ourselves. What if this happens to me again? How could I have been so naive to let this happen? I think about the story of Little Red Riding Hood at her grandmother's house, where the wolf was disguised as her granny. And Little Red Riding Hood would say, "Oh, what a deep voice you have. Something is off about my granny." And the wolf's like, "Yeah, better to greet you with, right? What big eyes you have, Granny. Oh, better to see you with. Okay. What big hands you have, though. Better to embrace you with. but what a big mouth you have. Better to eat you with. And then the wolf jumps out of the bed and eats her up. Something, of course, seemed off to Little Red Riding Hood, but then it was too late and the damage was already done. Like, how many times has this happened to you where you felt like something was off? You knew that something was off, but you just let it run its course until it proved to you that indeed you were correct. But alas, it was too late. Highly sensitive people over time learn to recognize these patterns and will become excellent judges of character, but it takes a while. And this is also part of the lone wolf path. And being a highly sensitive person, sometimes a little bit naive, this high sensitivity about us is supposed to be a survival skill and keep us safe when actually it lands us into some pretty shady predicaments due to the assumption that everyone is like us, when in fact, very few actually are. Remember, it's a very small percentage of the population that is highly sensitive, that is a lone wolf. The rest are not. They may disguise themselves to be, but it's up to us to recognize if something seems off, it probably is. Because our senses are even more highly attuned than the rest of the pack, from the moment we're born, we're already taking in our environment way more than everyone else. We're sensitive to the actions and the reactions of others. So the way we would respond sometimes was by having no response, by staying back, appearing to be shy. And we needed to physically distance ourselves from the pack because we were susceptible, overly susceptible to picking up their energy, especially the negative energy. Like if the pack wanted to go plan for a hunt at a certain time, but the little wolf would feel sick and unable to go because the little wolf knew that the energy wasn't quite right. Something was off. But of course, an uneasy tummy, which was a sign of anxiety, wasn't tolerated. And they went and entered into a terrible scene of conflict and unsettledness instead. So the wolf learned to trust their instincts even more. They had a very attuned sixth sense in that little wolf days that over time was suppressed or challenged or second guessed by the pack. So they may have stopped trusting their intuitive gift. And what became of them was a lonely wolf. And they were made to question themselves and instead become hypervigilant. This led to a lot of mistrust and betrayal. It led them to form relationships with certain pack members that betrayed them, while their sixth sense was out of alignment with their truth and brought them many misfortunes. So if you relate to this high sensitivity as a lone wolf, you also probably recognize yourself as a highly empathic person and prone to those bouts of loneliness. But no fear. This is actually your gift. This is what's going to allow you as a lone wolf on your path to make the most out of your purpose.